The morning sunlight barely broke through the thick clouds over Eldrath, yet the castle gardens were alive with color and fragrance. Lyra moved quietly among the flowers, her hands gentle as she pruned roses, adjusted the ivy, and whispered to the plants as if they could understand her. There was a rhythm to her movements, a silent grace that had gone unnoticed by the villagers but now drew the attention of the most powerful man in the kingdom. Kaelin watched her from the balcony above, his cloak shifting in the cold wind. He had learned to control much in his life: wars, laws, fear. But Lyra unsettled him in ways he did not fully understand. Her presence seemed to awaken a warmth in him that had long been dormant, a part of him that had grown cold from centuries of isolation and the weight of the curse that haunted his bloodline. Lyra noticed him too, though she tried not to. At first she thought it was her imagination, the shadows playing tricks on her eyes. But gradually, she began to feel his gaze, steady and piercing, following her movements, watching her with an intensity that both terrified and intrigued her. She had spent so many years hiding in plain sight, believing herself invisible, that the thought of someone truly seeing her made her heart pound. One afternoon, as rain began to patter gently against the castle windows, Lyra retreated to the small library tucked away behind the east wing. It was one of her favorite places, a sanctuary filled with ancient texts and maps of forgotten lands. The smell of old parchment and ink was comforting, a reminder of a world that still valued knowledge and wisdom. She ran her fingers over the spines of the books, pausing when she came to one that felt different from the others. Its cover was dark, bound in cracked leather and etched with symbols that seemed to shimmer faintly even in the dim light. Opening it carefully, she discovered pages filled with illustrations of plants, creatures, and beings that she had never seen before. But what caught her attention most were the passages about people with hidden powers, those whose appearances hid their true abilities, whose perceived weaknesses were actually marks of strength. A sudden movement behind her made Lyra spin around. Kaelin stood there, his expression unreadable but his presence commanding. "You found the forbidden section," he said quietly. "Few dare to enter here. But you are not like the others." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. I didn't mean to," she stammered, closing the book quickly. Kaelin stepped closer, the faint scent of cedar and cold stone surrounding him. "Do not hide from knowledge, Lyra. You have a gift, even if you do not yet understand it. This kingdom will need it one day." The words sent a shiver down her spine. She had always felt that there was something inside her that was different, something that the world feared. But hearing it confirmed by the Alpha King himself, the most powerful man she had ever seen, was overwhelming. Over the following days, Lyra began to notice changes in herself. She could sense things that others could not. The subtle shift in the wind that foretold storms, the faint pulse of life in the plants around her, even whispers of thoughts and feelings from those nearby. At first, these moments frightened her. She feared that she might be cursed, that the whispers of the villagers had been true in ways she did not understand. But Kaelin's calm presence gave her courage. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in deep purples and reds, Kaelin approached her in the gardens. He had a calm authority in his stride, yet his eyes betrayed something softer, something that no one else had ever seen. "You should not walk alone after dark," he said, his voice low, almost a whisper. "The shadows in this kingdom are not as simple as they seem." Lyra looked at him, meeting his gaze for the first time without fear. I am not afraid," she said softly, though her fingers clenched the edge of her cloak. Kaelin studied her, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Perhaps not. But there are dangers that even the bravest cannot face alone. Let me guide you." She hesitated, the weight of his words settling in her chest. For so long she had been taught to rely on no one, to hide her gifts, to survive quietly. But something in Kaelin's presence made her want to trust, to believe that maybe she could be more than the girl everyone had called ugly. Their walks in the garden became a ritual. Kaelin would speak little, observing more than he spoke, yet every word carried meaning. Lyra began to open herself in small ways, sharing stories of her childhood, her love for plants, and her fascination with the old texts. In return, Kalen shared glimpses of himself, not as the fearsome Alpha King but as a man burdened by loneliness and the weight of a curse that had shaped his life. One night, as rain fell in sheets against the castle windows, Lyra discovered an old, forgotten fountain at the edge of the garden. The water shimmered under the faint moonlight, reflecting not only her image but fragments of the sky above. Kneeling beside it, she traced her fingers through the water and felt a strange warmth spread through her hand, as though the fountain itself recognized her touch. Kalen appeared silently beside her. "That fountain is older than the castle," he said. "It has been said that it can reveal hidden truths, if one is brave enough to see them." Lyra looked up at him, her eyes wide. "What do you mean?" He knelt down beside her, his voice soft, yet firm. "It can show who you truly are, Lyra. Not what the world calls you, not what they whisper behind your back. Only the truth of your heart and your power." For a long moment they sat together, the rain pattering softly around them, and Lyra felt an unfamiliar sense of hope. She wanted to see what the fountain would reveal, to understand the gift she had felt stirring within her. And yet, a part of her hesitated, fearful of what she might find. Finally, gathering her courage, she placed her hands fully in the water. A shimmer rose from the surface, forming images of herself, strong, radiant, and capable, a reflection of what she could be rather than what she had been told she was. The images moved and shifted, showing glimpses of a future intertwined with Kalen, with power, and with the fate of the kingdom. Kalen watched her reaction carefully, his expression unreadable. "You see," he said softly, "you are not the girl they called ugly. You are something far greater, far more important than any name could define." Lyra felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, truly seen, not for appearances, not for the judgments of others, but for the strength and light that had always been inside her. But their moment was broken by a sudden chill in the air. The shadows around the fountain deepened unnaturally, and a whisper echoed through the garden, faint but unmistakable. "She will either save us or bring doom." Kalen's hand tightened over hers instinctively, his gaze scanning the darkness. "Stay close," he murmured. "Something watches us, and it does not rest." Lyra shivered, both from fear and the thrill of the unknown. She had begun to embrace her power, but the warning reminded her that the kingdom held dangers far beyond her imagination. Yet even in the face of shadow, she felt a growing confidence bolstered by Kalen's presence and the undeniable connection forming between them. As they rose from the fountain, rain soaking their cloaks, Lyra realized something profound. She was no longer just the girl the villagers had whispered about. She was a force of her own making, a spark of light in a kingdom overshadowed by curses and fear. And beside her, Kalen, the Alpha King, was not just her protector. He was a man drawn to her strength, captivated by her resilience, and perhaps even adoring her in ways she had never imagined. The night ended with them walking slowly back to the castle, the shadows still watching, still whispering. Lyra knew that her life had changed forever. She had glimpsed a truth that went beyond fear and labels, and she had felt a connection that could not be ignored. And yet the whisper lingered in her mind, a reminder that the road ahead would not be easy. Power, love, and destiny were now intertwined in ways she did not yet understand, and the shadows that waited in silence promised that the trials had only just begun. The kingdom of Eldrath had long been shrouded in twilight. The sun barely pierced the thick clouds, and the forests surrounding the royal castle were dense, dark, and full of whispered legends. People said the trees themselves remembered old curses, and those who wandered too far often never returned. Villagers spoke in hushed tones of the Alpha King, Kalen, who ruled with a power both feared and admired. They said his heart was locked away by a curse, one that no laughter or warmth could reach. Lyra walked along the narrow path to the village outskirts, her cloak drawn tight against the cold wind. Children hid their faces behind their mother's skirts when she passed. The villagers muttered cruel words, words she had grown used to over the years. Ugly, cursed, unworthy. She had heard it all. Still, she held her head high, moving with quiet dignity. The truth, the one thing no one could see, was that Lyra had a gentle strength that ran deep. Her small cottage was hidden behind a grove of blackened trees. Here she spent her days tending to herbs and reading the rare books that villagers discarded, calling them useless. Lyra loved knowledge, even if the world had turned its back on her. She understood the rhythms of nature better than anyone else in Eldrath, and sometimes she could sense things that others could not. The faint stirrings of magic, the whispers of spirits, the sighs of the earth itself. On the morning the royal decree arrived, a hush fell over the village. Every child, every woman, and every man had gathered at the square to hear the announcement. A parchment, sealed with the Alpha King's mark, had been delivered to the village elder. The words were simple yet impossible. Lyra was to serve in the royal gardens, a rare honor reserved for those who showed promise or held hidden talents. Lyra felt her heart race. She had never imagined stepping inside the castle walls. Pride, fear, and hope collided within her. She knew she must leave at once. She packed her few belongings, her fingers trembling as she tied her cloak, and she walked toward the castle with a cautious step. The castle of Eldrath was unlike anything she had ever seen. Towers of dark stone rose high into the sky, their peaks lost in the mist. Gargoyles perched on every corner, their eyes seeming to follow her as she approached. Guards in silver and black armor flanked the gates, their expressions cold and unreadable. And then in the shadow of the highest tower he appeared, the Alpha King himself. Kaelin was as the stories had said, tall, strong, and radiating a power that made hearts falter. But Lyra noticed something others might miss, a quiet loneliness like a candle flickering in the darkest night. He watched her with eyes that seemed to see not the whispers of the world, but the truth of her soul. "Lyra," he said, his voice deep, smooth, and commanding. "You will serve in the royal gardens. Do not disappoint the crown." Lyra nodded, unsure whether to speak. The sound of her name from his lips felt strange, like a promise and a warning all at once. She lowered her gaze, hiding the flutter of hope that rose in her chest. The gardens were vast, stretching across the northern wing of the castle. Statues of forgotten heroes and queens stood among fountains that shimmered with strange lights. Lyra's days became a routine of tending the plants, pruning vines, and arranging flowers with care. But every day Kaelin would find ways to watch her, sometimes from a balcony, sometimes from the shadowed corridors of the castle. Lyra began to notice the small things, the way his gaze lingered longer than it should, the subtle shift of his expression when she smiled or when she worked late into the night. She told herself it was foolish. The Alpha King could not possibly care for someone like her, someone who had been called ugly all her life. Yet a part of her could not deny the spark of connection, small and fragile, that threaded through the air whenever he was near. One evening, under the silver glow of the twin moons, Lyra wandered into the castle gardens. The night air was cool, and the scent of jasmine floated on the breeze. She reached the fountain at the center, the water reflecting the pale light like liquid glass. Lyra knelt by the fountain and began to hum softly, a melody her mother had once sung. The sound echoed through the garden, gentle and haunting. Kaelin appeared without warning, stepping silently from the shadows. Lyra's heart skipped a beat, but she did not run. She had grown used to the fear he inspired, and something inside her told her that he meant no harm. "You sing beautifully," Kaelin said, his voice low, carrying both admiration and something heavier, something unspoken. Lyra looked up at him, startled. I didn't think anyone could hear me," she whispered. "I heard you," he said, stepping closer. "You have a gift, Lyra. You see things others do not. You feel things others cannot. That is why the world fears you." Lyra felt a strange warmth spread through her chest. No one had ever spoken to her like this. No one had ever seen her, truly seen her, and yet she remembered the cruel words of the villagers. Ugly, unworthy. She struggled to believe him even as the truth of his gaze made her pulse quicken. "I am not," she began, but stopped herself. How could she explain a lifetime of whispers and stares, of a world that had rejected her, How could she make him understand that she had always felt invisible? Kalen reached out, his hand brushing against hers, careful but deliberate. "You are more than they say," he murmured. "And one day they will see it too. But for now, you belong here with me." A shadow flickered across the garden, unnoticed by Lyra but not by Kalen. In the darkness, a pair of eyes glimmered, watching them with a hunger that sent a shiver down his spine. The curse that had haunted him for centuries stirred, sensing something unfamiliar, something powerful in the girl before him. Lyra felt a chill and instinctively moved closer to Kalen. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder, not as a king commanding a subject, but as a man guarding someone he could not lose. The connection between them was electric, though neither spoke of it aloud. "Stay here tonight," Kalen said, his eyes scanning the shadowed edges of the garden. "I will not let harm touch you." Lyra nodded, a mixture of fear and trust twisting in her stomach. She felt safe in his presence, yet a sense of destiny, heavy and unrelenting, pressed upon her. She knew her life was changing. The world she had known, the village, the whispers, the isolation, was slipping away. In its place rose a new path, one of mystery, danger, and perhaps, if she was brave enough, love. The night stretched on. Lyra sat by the fountain, feeling the cool water trickle between her fingers, and wondered at the strange pull that drew her to Kalen. The Alpha King, feared and untouchable, seemed captivated by her in ways that went beyond beauty or appearance. It was as if he saw the truth hidden beneath her scars, beneath the labels the world had given her. And in that moment, under the pale glow of the twin moons, Lyra felt the first flicker of something she had never allowed herself to hope for. That she could be seen, truly seen, and perhaps even loved. But the shadow that had watched them did not blink. In its silence, it whispered a warning of dangers yet to come, of curses unbroken, and of a destiny neither Kalen nor Lyra could yet understand. And so, the first night in the castle ended with a fragile tension, an invisible thread stretching between the Alpha King and the girl called Ugly, binding them together in a way neither fully comprehended. Their hearts, cautious and wary, began a dance that would lead them into darkness, into light, and into a story that would change the fate of Eldrath forever.